For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins us to discuss freedom cannot be achieved with quick fix. Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you.
What was the precise target of your column?
You know, I was watching what was happening and people rushing to find ways of getting rid of Zuma. People, as I mentioned in my column, coming over to myself and my wife and saying, what are you doing about it? Why don't you speak out? And I was thinking that when one wants to remove the current president of the country, you have to be clear, what are the reasons? What is it that you want in the person's place? And there's not a virtue in simply speaking out. This phrase, speaking truth to power, it's overused, and I think people are not really thinking about how you plan in politics. If you want to remove X, what will happen afterwards? If you want to remove X, how do you best go about it? Now, we've seen since I wrote this column that the people who turned up for the Zuma Must Fall marches were a very small, pathetic number. And it seems to indicate that it's not really carefully organized. In fact, there were a lot of celebrities in the beginning. They don't seem in the main to have gone to these marches. And we need to ask ourselves, what is the place of organization? If something is being built, if it's a popular call to get rid of Zuma, if it's a popular call based on having clean government, government without violence, government without lawlessness, then do you not need something more than some public-spirited individuals? Do you not need a popular movement? Do we not need to build organizations? There are some organizations, but most of the people are there as private individuals, or they represent no one, or they are from NGOs. Now, NGOs are important bodies, but they don't have a membership. So I think one of the things we've got to be asking ourselves is, where do we want to go to? Many of the people who associated themselves with the call for Zuma to fall were also associated with the rise of Zuma, or never objected to the rise of Zuma. And in my view, many of the problems that we have with Zuma's presidency were evident long before he became president. The hyper-patriarchy, the lawlessness had come out long before in the Sheikh trial that had emerged, the militarism, all of these factors in Zuma, the weaknesses that people find in Zuma, people knew that when he was being elected. So what I want to know is, are people wanting to remove him just because of Nkandla? And what about the rest of these qualities? Do we just condone the way he conducted himself in the rape trial, the way he abused liberation songs in the rape trial and on other occasions, his general attitude to women, the lawlessness beyond Nkandla? What is the total view? Do we agree on this? Or is there a possibility that we're going to get another version of Zuma taking his place? Unless we are clear about the reasons, and in my view, unless you build organization to drive a process like this and safeguard what you want to achieve, we may end up getting something similar.
So where do we start if you're suggesting that there needs to be a process removing Zuma and going beyond that?
You know, it's very interesting with Nhlanhla Nene and the Guptas. We have seen that the banks have got certain power. Now, the banks are obviously much more powerful than private individuals, but we've seen that the banks have been prepared to use financial power in order to intervene on political matters that are critical. But it's not just the banks. There are people in professions, whether social workers, lawyers, doctors, a number of other people, students, who can intervene in a range of issues. We've seen, for example, this last period, how students have put rape on the agenda again. You know, it's one of those things, like the presence of black students in the universities, on which there was a silence. There was a silence about the inequalities in university education. There was a silence about the extent of raping of women on these universities. There was not a good system for addressing them. Now, people who have an interest, these are people who would also have an interest in having a different type of leader, a leader who is not so ambivalent about gender equality and gender-based violence, sexually based violence. So these ranges of different interest groups, and in some cases they were organized. You know, there are fairly small organizations like Sonke and other gender and sexually based organizations, but bringing all of these together on the basis of common ideas may be the way in which we go about. What we've had up to now has been some, I'm not using it contemptuously, but celebrity type things, people who have suddenly come out and said, I can't deal with this any longer, I believe that Zuma must do the right thing, what have you. What you need is to involve ordinary citizens of wherever they are located, not just in removing Zuma, but in rebuilding the democratic life that has been undermined.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about freedom cannot be achieved with quick fix.